würde sagen, dann starten wir in die zweite Runde des Talk-Tages quasi. Ich beginne auf Deutsch und gleich werde ich auf Englisch switchen, denn wir haben fantastische Gäste heute hier und da wird das Ganze auf Englisch besser funktionieren. Ich glaube, Deutsch ist da ein bisschen schwierig. Aber heute haben wir Krister und Michael von Green Gorilla dabei und reden ein bisschen über Troubleshooters und Action im Rollenspiel. Das ist so die Idee gleich. And I'm gonna switch to English because I need to warm up a little bit. It's kind of hard to start in German. I'm realizing and starting to speak English, but English. There you go. You see, not English, English. already
okay.
off the rails.
I'm talking Swedish.
English, Swanglish. There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect mix. The perfect mix sits right next to me. And I would like you both to introduce yourself to our audience here. And you can start however you want. Who are you and what are you doing in the world of pen and paper TTRPGs?
Okay, my name is Krister Sunderlin and I'm writing for häufiger in Sweden. Part of the team who made Cult Divinity Lost. And I also made the Troubleshooters, which is an action-adventure game set in the 60s. I've been writing role-playing games since the early 90s, publishing professionally since the mid-90s. And so I think I know how to do what to do, but I'm still learning.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, Michael Weber. I'm founder and a part of Green Gorilla. So we are a publisher founded in 2020, so quite young. And the German version of the Troubleshooters is our second game. So at some point we discovered it, or somebody from our community told us, have a look at that great new game, which is it's being crowdfunded right now. So and then I wrote an email to Krister saying we like to do that game in German. And so here we are, working together and having also a German edition of the Troubleshooters.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, Krister, I would want to start with you, and I would like to ask you if you could describe Troubleshooters in a way for the audience, if they don't know what Troubleshooters is. Mm-hmm. What's the deal there? What is the game all about? What kind of experiences do players can
Yes, the Troubleshooters is a game inspired by a lot of French and Belgian comics like Spirou, Tintin, Yokotsuno, etc.
Yeah.
It's set in the 1960s in a world which is quite like ours, but not quite the same. It has a lot of what we call Tintin countries, which is these countries which don't exist in the real world. The game itself is action-oriented. It's you're supposed to go on an adventure, and they're quite fast and furious. And you're dragged into these adventures which take you all over the world. I sometimes call it fantasy tourism. Because it's kind of like you base an adventure on what you find on Wikipedia or National Geographic or whatever documentary you're watching on Discovery Channel.
Yeah. And what was the first spark that initiated the idea of creating Troubleshooters?
Well, a long time ago, I found I revisited the old Il était une fois l'espace, which was an animated cartoon from France. It's part of the Once Upon a Time series, and I thought, why has nobody made a game like this?
Yeah.
And then another publisher in Sweden, Kobold Förlag, started publishing and retranslating all those French comics, including Spirou. And I thought, why has nobody made a game of this? And eventually I got tired about it. I got tired of waiting, so I made my own one.
Yeah.
And when I presented it to the other people at Helmgast, they said, tell nobody about this. This is too simple an idea. Everyone can steal it if you talk about it.
Yeah. So,
and to my knowledge, nobody else has published a game in a similar setting.
Yeah. They didn't, actually, so...
Well, except for Michael and...
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask the second question to you, Michael. What inspired you initially, or what attracted you to Troubleshooters, and what was the spark that ignited your passion to translate Troubleshooters?
Okay. So first of all, I love comics, and especially the Franco-Belgian comics, where I kind of grew up with them, reading them, and love it. And our first game also is a French game. It's a French game, and also in a Linclair comic style. It's Little Wizards. It's a children's RPG. So kind of this is already what we started doing, like because of, as I said, I really love that optic and that style in general. So to be honest, I just saw it, and it immediately took me in, like this illustrations that looked like from a Tintin book or Spirou or whatever, and then kind of the whole setting where you can, like the 60s, 70s, our world, but not quite the same. So there's a very nice picture in the book where it shows the moon landing, but it's not the Americans, but a French-Japanese team landing on the moon. So it's clear to everybody that, you have the creative freedom to use kind of our world as a background, but you don't have to be like historically correct. So this really catched me on, and kind of I immediately fell in love with the whole concept and the illustrations, and then they asked about it, and maybe as a kind of fun story about that, because when we had a review talk, also in a streaming context, and people asked about the rules, and I said I knew some of them, but I didn't know all the rules, and people were really critical about it, saying, but how can you do a book? How can you do a license about a book where you don't know all the rules and all the details? For me, it absolutely doesn't matter, because it was the whole setting that took me. So I'm kind of spontaneous about that, I guess.
Impulse, kind of like, right?
Yes.
I see. The follow-up question would be, how would you describe the unique blend of Troubleshooters, as we are talking a little bit about action here, and how to create action? How would you describe the duality about it, like the action-packed storytelling in a way, and the lightheartedness? How would you describe or differentiate the blend of them?
That's a hard question.
Not starting
I don't know if it's really something different, because it's part of the same thing, as a matter of fact, and I think the lightheartedness is kind of, again, the whole setting, the Franco-Belgian comics, because your favorite characters, Spirou or Tim, as we call him in German, he will never die or get seriously injured, right? And this gives you a lot of freedom in terms of action, creating action, creating crazy action, which is a lot of fun, which is lighthearted, but also that there's not this impending doom and danger you have in many other role-playing games, where you say, now when I take too much risk with my character, he will probably die. So I have to be very careful with my actions. So I think that kind of goes hand in hand, saying, because it has this light-hearted setting, it's a positive setting where you can try out things, and it's kind of nothing really bad can happen unless you really, really, really want it. There's the option for that, but because you have, it's going to be fine. You will have crazy car chases and explosions and everything, and at the end your character will still be fine. This gives you the opportunity to create crazy action, which you probably wouldn't do in other rule settings also.
That's interesting, because Felix, the previous talker here, right? He had the same idea in a way, like the freedom to tell whichever story you want, may it be action-packed or totally crazy, like whales landing on frickin', I don't know, And that this is essential to creating action and fun action in a way, and have like the opportunity to be free in a way. So that's kind of interesting. And spirit is the next headline, I would say, I suppose. Like Felix had the same spirit, and I would like to ask you, Krister, if you could describe Troubleshooters and its spirit in one sentence, what would that be?
Oh.
Not starting lighthearted here. Not starting lighthearted here.
This was a much harder question than I thought at first.
I told you I would be prepared.
Yes. I think actually that I would go back to my previous answer and just use 2 words: fantasy tourism.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's all about. You go all over the world and have fun adventures.
Yeah.
And to elaborate a bit on the crazy stuff, I mean, one of the things in the game is that it's very hard to die, but it's very easy to get caught.
Yeah.
So that the villain can has his, maniacal, now you can never stop me taking over the world, that kind of speech. So and then it's quite easy to get away from that situation. That drives the action forward.
Yeah. Speaking of action, I would like to go into the next swamp in a way of action in role-playing games. And this question goes out to you both. And my question would be, action is central to so many TTRPGs and especially Troubleshooters. How do you translate the thrill of high-speed chases, explosive scenes, and so on, and many more examples into TTRPG? How do you translate that?
I think first of all, the rules should not get in the way.
Yeah.
And that, again, this comes back to, I said in the beginning, I don't care too much about rules, which is true, but not true at the same time, because I think the rules are important in the end. So I was lucky that in this case the rules fit the setting, even if I didn't check it too much beforehand. But I think they must not be too complicated, because if you have extended rules and you spend your time throwing dice all the time to get every little detail of a scene or a fight or whatever, your action is probably would have said that, but that's not maybe not true. But you don't get in a flow. So because the action you describe is fast paced, right? So and you can say it's 1 minute of fight, and it takes us half an hour to do all the rule stuff. So I think that there has to be a connection between the what you want to achieve, in that case fast-paced action, and the rules. And there are some really nice mechanics in Troubleshooters. I don't know if we want to go that deep.
You can surely.
That kind of are also drivers of that action feeling. For example, if you have you're in a fight and you roll damage, there is a mechanic where the dice are exploding. So if you have a 6, you roll another dice. So there's a chance that it really escalates quickly. And you get unconscious and wake up in the throes of your arch enemy. So it really can happen, and it's not about after 15 rounds, but it may happen very fast. I think that's one point. There's another point about also kind of player empowerment, I think.
Yes.
So there is a mechanic in the game where the players can spend story points to change the scene. This is also, for me, this is a drive of action, or especially of that kind of crazy action or crazy turns, which is really part of that Franco-Belgian style, that things happen that you didn't expect before. So even if you have, as a GM, you have an idea of the story of what should happen, then your players say, okay, I spent those story points again before because I got caught maybe by my arch enemy. but then I use it to change the scene, and this is also trial because even the GM then doesn't know what happens next.
Yeah.
Probably goes into new direction. So maybe I stop here and give you a chance. There is some more definitely aspects of that.
Oh yes, I think that as you say, the rules must not come in the way. But I'm also the kind of guy who writes rules which support the kind of feeling that you want in the game. Hence the story points. I was very deep into this the force theory thing in the early 2000s, where the point was that system does matter. So I designed the system to not be in the way, but still push the action along. So, and one important thing here is that you fail forward. Even if you fail with your action, the action doesn't stop. As okay, you didn't open the door. That shouldn't happen. But instead, okay, you open the door, but the alarm goes off.
I see. Yeah.
So, and that kind of philosophy, I think, is not a really mechanic, but a philosophy of failing forward. Which helps a lot in driving the action. Of course, player agency and ways of managing that by story point is really important too. And what I regret that I didn't put in the game is something that I realized this year, to think in panels. You have one comic panel to describe what you do this around. And try to describe what you do as if it was a comic panel. That kind of thinking also speeds up the action. Because you only have this space.
That's interesting, because that's the same spirit we talk about, and Felix talked about, just setting scenes and let the players drive the story. The solutions to the problems you set in these scenes are not yours to decide. The solutions should come from the players, right?
Yes.
And drive the story forward. I see that.
I think it's also a bit about pacing, and I think this is general. I think that's not specific to troubleshooters, but again, but it's described in here quite extensively, and I really like that. So you have kind of different types of scenes, you have that. If you're really into that action scene, you want to play it out, what happens on a narrative level. But then there's scenes where you travel somewhere, and you don't have to play that out, right? And it tells you, okay, this is a transactional. How do you call it?
Transaction scene. There was planning scenes.
So just giving you a framework of understanding what kind of scenes am I trying to do. Then I maybe realize, okay, they're flying from Paris to New York, so maybe we don't have to play that. Just tell it as a GM, and this kind of realization helps you, because then the action is in New York and you're getting there much quicker. Also helps, I think.
I remember as a very old game of Call of Cthulhu which I played. In which the players were planning every little detail of how to get there, what to bring, etc. And finally, the game master just lost it and said, "Nepal, you're there. What do you do?"
All right. He was sick of hearing all the details.
Yes.
Right? I see.
Hence the travel scenes in this game.
I see. Speaking about pacing, that's exactly where I wanted to travel in this discussion. And I would want to ask you if you see these fast-paced action settings as the only type of action in troubleshooters, or are there other elements which are kind of action too? Do you have like some ideas to that?
Well, everything that drives the story forward is a kind of action. So even when the players are discussing something and role-playing something, and that brings their characters forward, that's still an action. So it doesn't have to be fast-paced car chases or firefights or whatever. Even a discussion can be extremely action-filled. I mean, just look at the final discussion between the bride and Bill in Kill Bill.
Oh yeah.
Nothing. There's really not any action in it, and when the action happens, it's very, very explosive. But you still feel the drive forward. Something is happening all the time, even if they're just sitting and talking.
Yeah. That reminds me of a quote. I listened to a podcast, and it was, I suppose, The Last of Us, the series. And Craig Mazin, the author of this series, was talking about action and what action really means. And he said something in the same spirit. He said that action can surely be these explosive, car chases and whatever, but we still have the same feeling of excitement when our main characters, our protagonists of our heart, are like in a discussion where they are talking about, I don't know, like they are saying something stupid in a way and are risking their heads, and we are sitting there in our chairs and caught to it and God damn it, why did you say that? Don't die, So that's kind of action too, right?
Yes.
And how do you support that in Troubleshooters? Do you have any tips maybe for GMs out there who want to, create some scenes of that kind?
Sadly, I don't.
Yeah.
I wish I have, but the book would be like this much.
Yeah, I see.
Every idea I have of driving story forward. But in a second edition.
So what I had in my mind when we just said the quote, so it's like if you take like Ocean's 11, the film, right? Yeah. And so there is a main action, and it's fast paced when the robbery or the heist happens, right? But there's long planning beforehand, and this is really exciting too.
Yeah,
when they're trying to find the right people and scouting the location, and there's a long time in the film, right? And then also there's this aftermath where you start to understand what actually happened. And that's also exciting. And again, I think it's a good story which you're playing has those elements all together. But again, you have to understand what happens when. And there's one. I really think it's a bad habit in role playing, and I see it a lot, that you're in the middle of the action. Now you're really the car chase and explosions and whatever, and then the characters start discussing, should we go do that, or do that, or do that, or do that? It's like, you cannot do that. We're talking about in 3 seconds something there's an explosion about something, so you have to act. So maybe again, understanding, and as a GM, maybe leading this in a good way, saying, okay, there's a place where you can plan, you can prepare, and this can be very exciting. But then you're in the action, you have to decide now.
Yes. I do have a simple trick, and I stole it. I need to be honest here, I stole it. Does anybody know Telltale games, video games? Anybody? Telltale video games? Do you know? Yeah. There, in the back. Behind you. Telltale are games like story-driven video games, I suppose, and you have these clocks, these timers.
Yes.
And they start, and you need to decide mostly horrific decisions, like, does this person die or that one? You like both, but decide. And you got a timer like of 15 seconds, and I stole it. I do enjoy, I do have to be honest here, I do enjoy to count. In a decision, I count 10, 9, give me an answer now, 7, 8. And in our community, people are adapting it. And I see GMs everywhere in our Discord doing the same thing. And I do have to be honest, I was once playing with a guy who adapted it, and my heart was racing. So I got dealt with my own cards, and I really felt the excitement. And that's an important thing to note. Like, don't interrupt the flow, right? Don't skim through the book in a mid-action scene. But that would be tips for GMs. And I would like to drive the story forward to player engagement. And what do players, or what are possibilities for players to engage and drive the story forward and initiate action maybe, or develop action? What do players need to do to start great action sequences? May they be like fast-paced or story-driven slow ones?
I think it comes back to really the core of role playing. You play a role, you play that character, and you really have to understand. So, and again, like ties a little bit to what I said before. So these discussions, so what's the best solution for us as a group, comes a little bit from they don't understand that they play this character, and this character in that moment would act in a certain way, maybe would not discuss, you know. But you're feeling the danger that now you're going like forward and you don't have asked the others if they are okay with it. But if you understand that your character is set in a certain way because of his experiences, whatever, that he would take action in a certain way, then you should do it. And you should maybe tell this to your players, and that would help. And also if you're like in a setting like Troubleshooters, we always say it's like the rule of cool. Yeah. So if you have a crazy idea, just do it. Yeah, because we have that kind of safer setting where you probably don't die, and then you can try it out. And I would definitely encourage that and tell them play it. Just do it in that moment.
A specific mechanic is complications, where you get story points for doing stupid things. Or for acting out your character's flaws. That helps a lot of both driving the story and rewarding the player for doing so. And enabling them for doing something in the future.
It's like giving cookies to the players here. You did a good thing. Here you go. Yeah, right.
And then you can use the cookies to bribe the
It's not only that, because you get the story points and you can use it, that's one part of it, but also saying you have a complication and you're awarded to play it out, but it's good to play it out, really helps, because you're kind of freeing yourself from, okay, I'm that hero, and I also always want to play out my good character traits and everything. And this,
Exactly. I mean, the best heroes are those who have flaws. And overcome those flaws eventually.
Definitely.
What would you say about creativity? Is that a thing which players are, I don't want to say are supposed to have, or I rephrase that. Is it important for players to have creativity? And how do you, as a GM, help them get there in a creative space? And
I'm more of Pablo Picasso's saying that you should steal. Not as much that you create new stuff, but because that's quite impossible. You steal stuff and make it your own. So if you see a cool scene or read a cool scene in a book and you think this should fit my character, then steal that, use that, try to do the same thing.
And do you have examples where a player was so creative that you never ever are gonna forget that scene or that sequence in Troubleshooters especially?
Well, there was this scene which during the playtest where I played Eloise, a 16-year-old mad inventor, and we had been caught by the great villain. He was starting his great villain speech, and I just got the silly idea of changing things in the scene a lot. So I paid a lot of story points for it, and we had a lot of story points because we were caught. And said, "Dad, do you have to be that so embarrassingly B-movie villainy?" And the GM, he just bought it. "Pumpkin, what are you doing here?" And that led to a great scene, which later became incorporated as an example of how you can change stuff in the core book.
Cool. And that would be an example of I would suppose, low-paced action sequence in a way, if we would like to stay on topic.
The scene ended up with us being locked into her room.
Oh, never mind.
Which was instead of a cell.
Oh, I see. Never mind.
All pink and plushy and.
Funnily enough, we have a lot of discussion in our community about this part of because they're asking, so is this now officially part of the story that he is your dad, or is it just an example of kind of alternative? That's what I say.
And I was going to say something, but well, anyway, there it was. About a year later, after I played that scene,
Yeah.
I finally got to read one of the new books in the Spirou series about Zorglub, the great evil. He has a daughter called Sandra with a Z.
I see.
And she makes the same complaint.
Oh,
My dad is just a parody of a Bond villain.
so it got translated into the original, I suppose. Great stuff. I have a last question for this segment, and that would be: what advice do you have for game masters to get into the flow and design cinematic flair for their sessions? May it be action-packed or not?
Again, I think in panels.
Yeah.
And also think in pages, like when you want to change a scene. Now we're flipping the page, we're there instead. This is a new scene. Like actually do that movement of flipping the page, even if you don't have anything to flip, just to illustrate that now we're changing into a completely new scene.
Yeah.
That drives the story immensely forward.
Yeah.
Just because kind of part of that is to have the courage to skip things.
Yes.
Yeah. And keep the flow going. Keeping the flow going is a headline again, and I would like to drive the story of this conversation a little bit forward, and I would like to get into the design philosophy and challenges with it. And I would like to ask, in creating Troubleshooters, there must be hurdles, or translating it. Which were the hardest to overcome, and which were your own personal action scenes while designing Troubleshooters and translating it? I like that look.
The big flow stopper, I would say, was after the Kickstarter, when we had to write the final things and to get it out. Also getting it translated into French with our French partners. They took a lot of time to do that.
Yeah.
So we couldn't actually say that we had fulfilled the Kickstarter until 2 years later.
Oh, I see.
Because the French dragged it out. As for the great flow, was when also during the playtests, what kind of skills do we need in this game? And we took a very minimalist approach. We don't need those skills. We don't need that skill. We want in just enough skills so that we can have a variety of ways of investigating stuff. But we don't need all those different combat skills. Yeah. Because basically you shoot things and you hit things.
Keep it simple, stupid, right?
Yeah. And that's also keep it simple, stupid. That's also a great philosophy to think of. Yeah. And I am very inspired by Sandy Peterson and his design in Call of Cthulhu. It's a very, very minimalist rules-wise. Yeah. So I just try to keep in those footprints and take it one step forward. Yeah.
So when it comes to, the answer is very simple. So when it comes to translation, I just say like this. I mean, even if it's not too many rules, it's how many pages? 234.
Okay.
It's more on the German. I think that's really, but this is general to translation, that if you translate from English to German is like 30 to 50% longer. So you get even bigger books. Yeah. And you have to remake the whole layout. So that's really a driver, and obviously you have to translate it. But I must say, because I translated around half of the books, I never had another translator helping. Here's a huge chapter about the world of the Troubleshooters. So it's giving you a lot of background about the time and how the transport worked in that way, how like trains, cars, ocean freighters, planes, what were the kind of most famous during that time, and then you have different cities, and you get a lot of background about those and what you can do there, and also places that are not existent in the real world and everything. And it was really a lot of work to translate it, but it was at the same time so much fun to translate it, because you really read it, and at every point we say, okay, now I have an idea about an adventure that could happen there, and sometimes it's just like one sentence, but then there's a whole word starting
I can
in your
imagine.
head. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Speaking of imagination, Troubleshooters is clearly inspired by like classic spy movies and the Saturday morning cartoons in a way, and Tintin and so on. What is your favorite part of the book, which was like in spirit encapsulate all of your inspirations? Is there any one part of the book?
I think it's a small chapter.
Yeah.
The start of each chapter has a small dialogue, almost like a little comic, but we didn't have the budget to make all the comic panels.
Yeah.
So we used heads instead and used speech bubbles. And each of those kind of captured the sense of the game, that this is actually a comic game.
I think for me it's really the one illustration we talked about before, where you have the moon landing, you have the white and red rocket, so immediately you know where it comes from. And then you have the French and Japanese flags, so this really is the spirit compressed
There you
into
go,
one
there you
picture,
go.
yeah. It really tells you, okay, it's like Franco-Belgian comics,
Yeah,
it tells you, don't take it seriously.
Great.
So,
Yeah. Cool. I would like to get back to topic about fast-paced action and low-paced action, and I would like to ask you one last question, because the time is running out, and it's running fast today. God damn it. The last question would be, how do you balance both things in a way, and especially with the drive of players narrating the story forward too? How do you balance all these things? Are there any tips for you, for the guys?
It kind of balances itself.
Yeah.
I mean, you feel at the table when players are ready to go on.
Yeah.
So whenever you feel that, don't hesitate to flip the page.
Yeah.
And it's not something that you can describe really. It's just something that happens, that everyone is subconsciously agreeing to.
Yeah.
And I think kind of how that like you said, like fantasy tourism, I think that really helps, because that gives you a kind of natural rhythm. You have to travel to a location, you have probably to orient yourself, investigate about something, then something gets more into action, and then kind of you solve it or get another hint or whatever, and then you travel on, so that this gives a little bit of a rhythm already. I think that helps. And obviously also it helps if like there are adventures. I mean, there's one adventure book already out, two others coming very, very soon in English, like in a few weeks' time, and in German like
With a little luck,
next year.
I should have some samples next week. Next Friday.
And then there are some free for download, and so there are a lot of adventures. And obviously somebody thought about this beforehand, kind of giving you a kind of mix between fast and slow. But I think the kind of stories you're telling here really kind of creates this automatically.
Yeah.
At each location we have in the game, we have 3 or 4 adventure seats. So you can get going very, very quickly.
Yeah. Flipping the page on this talk, I got two last questions, and I would like to ask you to imagine one action scene of your dreams. If you could play it, what would that be for both of you? In Troubleshooters, obviously.
I'm very much there's, as I said, like in this chapter of the world of the Troubleshooters, there's I think it's half a page about Kowloon City, Hong Kong Kowloon City. Yeah. And this really, I'm obsessed about this right now, to be honest. I think it's this kind of this setting is so exciting. It's a small city that existed until the 80s, I think.
90s, I think.
The 90s, when it was broken down. Which is kind of like an organism grew over a long time, and my action scene would really play there, because the city doesn't
doesn't grow outward; it grew upwards.
Yes. So if you have like a scene where you would try to catch somebody fleeing or whatever. It wouldn't be on one level, but you would have
Like,
all the going to the stairs and on the rooftops and everything. So that would be
and jumping
my,
from the balconies, right?
Yes,
to the
yes,
top.
yes.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah,
Cyberpunk in a way.
Very much.
maybe.
I mean, a lot of cyberpunk got
Yeah.
inspired by Kowloon.
Yeah. The design of the slum side.
Design and we can discuss that.